Good evening. Welcome to Community Tapestry. My name is James Stowe, and I am pleased to serve as your Executive Director of the Community Relations Commission for the City of Columbus. And you've joined us for our program this evening, Community Tapestry, and our version called Conversations, where we have a chance to talk with people that you might know by their name and their status in our community, but maybe not knowing them very much at all. But we get a chance to kind of get up close and personal to persons, and so you get a chance to kind of know them maybe in a different way. And so I'm delighted to have with us today, as part of our team of guests today, persons who I've met on one occasion and have just come to know through someone very familiar to many of us there, one of our own staff persons in our office, Napoleon Bell. He's actually the second, I believe. We'll find out more about that very shortly. But at any rate, they are in the persons of Mr. Napoleon Bell and his lovely wife, Dorothy Jane Lyman Bell. So glad to have both of you here. Welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Jim.
Again, we have a chance to kind of talk with people in this conversational format of our program, folks, and want to just have a conversation with you all tonight about your experiences here in Columbus and throughout your lives here as a married couple. We're going to find out about that as well. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Bell, and kind of ask the question: what brought you to Columbus? First of all, is this home for you, by the way?
No, Jim, I grew up in Youngstown, northeast of here, and went to high school there, to college at Mount Union College, and law school at Western Reserve. After I passed the bar, I decided to come to Columbus.
Why Columbus? I mean, you could have gone, I suspect, other places.
Well, you know, I had been in the service, and I didn't want to be too far away from home. And also, I had a good friend here, a fellow named J. Maynard Dickerson, who at the time was chairman of the Industrial Commission. So he offered me a job. That was another thing. I had practiced a little bit after passing the bar in 1954 in Youngstown, but then I wasn't making that much money, so I said when a job offer came, I was hot on the trail. So I came to Columbus on a job, really, and amazingly enough, at that time in 1954, 55, I was making $450 a month. Well, that was a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. A lot of money, no question.
So I enjoyed it, but that's what really brought me to Columbus, and of course, a lot of things happened after that.
Well, somebody else was in Columbus at the same time. Her name was Dorothy, so we're going to try to find out more about her. But Columbus girl.
Yes, born and raised right here in Columbus, Ohio, on the Far East Side. And you want to know how I met him?
Well, let's talk about you growing up, for instance. Were you at the East High School? What was high school? East High School?
East High School. It was a great East High School. In fact, I think they're having a reunion this weekend, so I understand. Maybe I can partake in some of that.
Outstanding.
But I enjoyed high school, played in the band, did all of the things that most kids do. And then when I left, I went to Ohio State, enjoyed that tenure. And from then on, I met Napoleon.
Let's back up a second now.
Okay.
Tell us a little about Dorothy growing up on the Far East Side as a youngster here in Columbus,
Street.
Ohio, 22nd Street.
Yes,
what was that like?
That was a great period, great period. On 22nd Street, we were just one street over from Poindexter Village. And then from there, and Poindexter Village used to be the Blackberry Patch. So we knew everybody in that whole area, and everybody talking about taking care of other people's children. Everybody took care of everybody's children. On our street, we had a lot of the school teachers. As I recall, there was Mrs. DeLoach and Mr. Cosby and Miss Wall and a number of others. And then we had a lot of the college kids who lived on 22nd because they could not stay on the campus. So they did the rooming houses, which was really nice.
Now, you mean they couldn't stay on the campus? What do you mean by that?
Well, there was no room for black children in the dorms. So therefore, they had to stay in the rooming houses that they made up for students off the campus. And then...
this is at the Ohio State University?
At the Ohio State University. We had a really unique area because I lived very close to Mount Vernon Avenue, which everybody knows where Mount Vernon Avenue is. And in those days, Mount Vernon Avenue was a super nice place because you did all your shopping there, you went to the movies there, you worked there. I think I worked in every store on Mount Vernon Avenue on a Saturday or Friday or Saturday during my school years. And it was just a wonderful place. You could walk down the street at midnight and no one would pay any attention to you nor bother you. That was some years ago.
Yeah, some years ago.
But it was a wonderful area to live in, and I enjoyed it. And a lot of wonderful people came out of that whole East End that you would know about now. And then I had 5 brothers and sisters.
So large family?
Yes, a large family. My mother and dad, we had a wonderful family. My brother, Joe Lyman, who had the first black dealership in Marysville, Ohio. And then my brother, Eugene, my sister, Malcolma. She had 6 children. My sister, Kathleen, and another brother. Did I mention Eugene?
Yes, you did.
Connie. A sister, Connie. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, we had a great big family, and all of the families had large families up and down 22nd Street. So it was a wonderful experience.
So East High School is next for you, and then what's going on in your growing up now? You're in Youngstown.
Well, Youngstown was known for steel, and I grew up under that atmosphere, and I worked in a steel mill, and I enjoyed that. Although I think that's one of the reasons I decided to go to college. I said, I am not going to be caught working in the steel mills forever. But it was a great life, not like it is today. The steel mills are gone, and so there's not the work up there, and the population has gone down from the time I was there. It was close to 200,000. It's probably down, under 100,000 at this point. But it was a good city. Nobody locked your doors until the last person got in. But now it's nothing like that. In fact, the downtown area is almost like a wasteland. The stores are closed, but it was a good life for me. But right after high school, I went into service, and out of the service, of course, after 2.5 years overseas in Japan, then I came back and started college. And so for 7 years after that, I was in college, and then of course down here where I had another war.
I see. Now let's get back for a second here. Because Dorothy was alluding a minute ago, Miss Bell was alluding to us here a minute ago about this idea of having met somebody shortly thereafter, the Ohio State experience and so forth and so on. How did that happen, folks? Who wants to tell that story? Who could tell it
I can tell
as close to the truth as it actually occurred? Go ahead.
I think I can add a little bit to it. She probably had the inner workings because she was with her sister. So it happened that her sister worked at the same office building that I did, the state office building. She didn't work for the Industrial Commission, but she was in the building. So I met her first, So I was talking to her, and I tried to take her out on a date on occasion. She had nothing to do with it, she said. But she said, I think my sister might like it. I'd like to introduce you to my sister. So I said, all right, I'll try that. So she said, her birthday's coming up, June 17th. So she said, you got to come to the party. And I said, well, all right, I'll be out there. But it turns out that a friend of mine was having a surprise birthday party for me.
Oh, my, okay.
So my birthday is set June 17th.
Is that right? Okay.
And so I went to my birthday party, surprise birthday party, and so therefore I was not there. So the next day, Kathleen said, well, you didn't come to my sister's birthday party. So when I told her, I said, well, my birthday was the same day, she understood. But she worked out a way so that between the two of them, we got to meet each other later. And I can say now, looking back over it 51 years, it wasn't a choice meeting. It was a meeting that was planned. But I'm glad it was planned. I've enjoyed the entire period of time. Now she can tell her version, which might be a little different.
Well, let's just confer notes here there with Miss Dorothy Bell. So is that quite accurate, or is that, are there any pieces missing out of that story?
That is almost accurate.
Almost accurate.
She told me all about him and what a wonderful person he was, and she said, oh, he's a great athlete, you would like that. She ran off all the things that I would like that was a plus for him. And then I said, okay, I'd like to meet him. So she arranged for him to stop by and meet me at our home. And then when he arrived, I conveniently was not there.
That's right.
Conveniently, you said?
Conveniently was not there.
Right.
And then I had to stroll in later and say, oh, I was so busy. I was doing some real estate, and I just did not, realize the time had passed. So, and then I met him that evening. And then we talked. We talked, every day from that point on for 6 months. No, 12 months. How many years? Well, from, I'd say September until June, until May of the next year, and then we got married.
Outstanding.
But we really clicked. So it was a good arrangement. Good
You know what it was,
arrangement.
Tim?
What was it?
She had a car. I was a poor boy.
I see.
So she would come by with her car, and we would go out, and that was very nice. I said, "Oh, this is pretty nice." But all in all, I must say that I'm not sorry that it happened, and we've been very close from the very moment we met. And now it's been 51 years since, and I'm certainly glad that it happened the way it did. But we've had a lot of fun, and now that she's younger than I am, and we're not looking back. We're continuing to enjoy life as best we can. So it was a good meeting, and I'm very happy that we were able to pull this off, young lady.
Careers. Both of you
Yeah,
come in,
career-wise, right.
and you all were establishing the community. You get married and so forth and so on. And Ms. Bell, you are an attorney. What was it being an attorney? I should say, what was it like, rather, being an attorney? We're talking about 1956, 57 time
Right.
frame. What was it like being an
You know,
attorney in Ohio?
I'm glad you asked that question. I'm here this weekend, and I spoke to a group of lawyers that are apprentices in the various law firms throughout the city. And my theme was what it was like in the 50s and what it's like now. When I came to Columbus to practice, I started my full-time practice in 58. Came here in 55 and worked for 3 or 4 years. And began my practice in 58. In 1958, there were probably 25 lawyers of color in this town, none of whom had any office space in any office building. They were in first floor walk-ups, or they were in their home. No lawyer of color was in any law firm, established law firm in this city. So it was difficult. But being a young lawyer, we look forward to the day when we could open an office and put our name in gold leaf on the window, and that was a big thing, you know. Well, it turned out that after we did that, the American Bar Association said, "No, you can't do that. That's advertising." So we had to scrape all that off. And not that we were in any office building, they were on windows well, my first office was a storefront on West Broad on the hilltop. It was a young man named Clenzo Fox who still practices today. But later we were able to get an office with John Bowen. John Bowen and I started an office at Tenney's Town, which was just across the street from Lazarus. The building is no longer there now. But we were the first to get an office in a building that had an elevator. And we were on the 3rd floor. We flourished there, and after a few years, we took over the entire floor under the name of Bowen, Bell, Francis, White, and Saunders. So we did that for about 5 or 6 years, and then from that point, we moved on to a couple other offices, and ultimately got into the Borden building, which is a new building at that time, A1 offices, and there we had a law firm, established law firm, under the name of Bell, White, Ross, Stein, and Lehman. I believe that was the name. But we had a lot of fun, but it was most difficult because, number one, you couldn't advertise. You couldn't do anything like that. You had a word of mouth and performance. But as I was telling these young men and women, I enjoyed the practice. It was good to me. But today it's more of a merry-go-round, because lawyers are out there chasing each other, getting cases. They're making a lot of money. But I don't think I could practice law today under the circumstances. While we were there, it was good. I enjoyed it. We worked hard. On the basis of performance, our practice grew, but only on the basis of performance. That I think you've got to achieve, I think, without advertising all over the world. Nobody knows what you can do except by the size of your ad in the paper or the time you spend on television. But it was a good life for me. It gave me an opportunity to support my family and now to retire, and so I can't complain about it. But I don't know that I would want to practice today as things are. But it was good. I enjoyed it. Columbus was good to us.
Besides you, Miss Dorothy Bell was pursuing her own career and decided one day, having raised a family and so forth, 2 children.
Yes, 2
to
children.
the family and so forth, and decided to go to work one day. Well, I mean, what happened? I mean, why go to work?
That was a good question at the time. I was lonesome. My daughter Kay was going off to college, and I was very lonesome because we did so many things together. My son was still in high school, but that was okay. And I thought, well, I should get a job. I should do something wonderful. And so then I was going for a ride to pick up my son at school, Bishop Hartley, and I passed by this office, and it was HER Realtors. And I thought, well, this is close enough to his school so that he gets hurt, I can be right there. I'm still thinking motherly, you know. Right. But anyhow, I walked in and told them that I would like to work for them, and they told me what I would have to do. And I did that and got my license. And then I found out at one of our meetings that I was the first black agent that they had. And so I was their very first.
Now Ms. Bell, back up a second now. Were there other realtors in the community at that time?
Yes.
With other firms?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Other realtors of color?
Right. There were.
But you were the very first one, though, with this particular
company
agency.
Because it was conveniently located, number one. That was the first thing that I saw. And it was their Bexley office. And I liked the looks of the building. And I thought, well, let me check this one out first. And I did, and I found out it was a large company. I thought, well, this is maybe where I should be, is with a large company. And I did do very well with that company. And as the time went on, I went to the Gahanna office. And for a while there, I was president of the Midtown Area Association for Realtors. And that was interesting. And it's just been a great experience. And like I said, I did very well in real estate. So.
But now again, you've just left the ranks of being a housewife and certainly a person involved with the rearing of your children, which is critically important to you all, I suspect, at that point in time as well. But you didn't just go to work now. You did.
Oh, I did other stuff.
You did very well, though. But your realtor business, you did very, very well.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
That's accurate. That's very accurate.
So not only did you go to work, I mean, you just opened up a whole new skill set for yourself and just flourished in it, it sounds like.
That's true. That's so true. And even during that time, we still did other things in the community. You know, I belonged to the Twin Rivers chapter of Links, which is an organization connected with a large organization of about 10,000 or more women in the country. And they did a lot of, we did a lot of charitable things. We worked on, I don't know how many different committees and facets that we worked for children. And with Project Hope, which was also for children. I've always done something where children were involved. There was the Twig 110 of Children's Hospital, and I was with them, I think, for 40 years when it was called Wilbur King Branch, and they did not have any black twigs. We were just branches. So they finally took in all of the branches and made them twigs, because we were all working for the same thing.
And there's again twigs and branches of those who help
right,
with donations for the Children's Hospital.
That's right. And that was a wonderful experience. And we used to promote the Ebony Fashion Fair, which they still do, I believe. I've been away 10 years, but I believe they still do that, which is always a great moneymaker and great fundraiser, and we make a lot of money for the hospital. I know that we worked for the YMCA when we first got married. That was always interesting.
Right.
And was it the
annual membership
drive? Membership drive. So when you're, and for the church, when you're involved, you have to be involved in a number of things that will help your community and give back something. And we've always tried to do that.
Where'd that come from, though, both of you? You're successful law practice and going from place to place, going from right across on the street from Lazarus, then to the Borden building as your career ended up and so forth, and then your successful real estate ventures as well. Why this sense of community involvement? Where did it come from?
Well, Jim, it's not difficult to explain. I think it's something that our age folk, that's something you did. You worked to help others, and you always remembered from whence you came. But for the sake of God, there go I, So I took great pleasure in working with United Negro College Fund, NAACP, Urban League, YMCA, all of those concerns, because we felt that if we can make a better community, that means that as a professional person, certainly that helps me also. So it wasn't just a matter of doing it, not thinking something's not going to come back to you. We did it out of the fact that we wanted everybody to flourish. And they did, you know. Working with United Negro College Fund, I had an opportunity to meet with a number of folk on both sides of the aisle, so to speak. And we like to look back on it and think that some of the groundwork that was, and things that were established at that time is a result of what we see now. Now, see, we did not have black judges. We certainly didn't have a black mayor, and not that many black teachers across the city. But now that's all open. Certainly you couldn't live anywhere you wanted to live. But in order to combat that situation, some of us got together and established a mortgage loan company, Beneficial Acceptance Corporation. Our motto was a home of your choice in the area of your choice. There was a time that you couldn't buy a house in certain areas. There was a time when real estate brokers steered individuals to certain areas so that that area would turn black and they'd sell all of the houses. So there are a lot of things done. But as a result of work with the Urban League, United Negro College Fund, and good people in the community on both sides of the fence, we were able to change that. And I lived long enough now to see a complete change. Columbus is not what it was in the 50s. It's a better city. It's a city that has gone far beyond any city in the state of Ohio. It's the largest city in Ohio, most populous city in Ohio. And so I think we like to feel that as a result of participating in these things, we help to lay the foundation for that type of growth. And now I've got a son and a daughter living in this city and grandchildren, and they are reaping the benefits. Well, not only what we did, but a lot of others like us did to lay that foundation, for which we are truly grateful that we had an opportunity to do so.
We're talking to Mr. Napoleon and Ms. Dorothy Bell, members of our community, part of our conversation program this evening. You can join us, by the way, by dialing 645-6557 with a question or a comment. We'd love to hear from you as well. Ms. Dorothy, what about you? Where did this sense of giving come as far as you were concerned?
Well, I think it's kind of a basic thing that you get when you're growing up. You know, your parents are always doing something for their neighbors, for the children in the neighborhoods. It's just one of those things that give this or give your old clothes to this kid who doesn't have any. And there were 6 of us, so you know we were always on the taking in plus the giving in. And what we had that we couldn't wear anymore, we gave to someone else. And we would babysit and do nice things for people in the area that couldn't afford a babysitter. It's just a thing that we had to do. And I think after that, you know, you belong to certain club groups, and you learn more and more that this is what you do in life, to help other people. I just left a convention with a club group called the Carousels, and we have 20 chapters, and each year we give a huge donation to charity. But we're basically a social club. We just really have fun most of the time. And it was started right here in Columbus, and Glenna Watson was the founder. But you have organizations like that do wonderful things, and even the members do other things. They outreach and go past and far beyond just the club group. And it's just a part of your life. It's giving and helping.
We've got a caller right now, folks online with us. Caller, you still there?
Yes.
Go to the question or comment. Good to hear from you.
Great. I would just like to know from Mr. Bell what it was like practicing law during those very turbulent 60s and early 70s.
Okay, Carl, I think you asked about what it was like, Mr. Bell, and practicing law during those turbulent times in the 50s and the 60s.
Well, it was difficult and yet very interesting at times. I think we had overcome a lot of things. And I mentioned office space to begin with. We did overcome that. In addition to that, we had to overcome the perception that prevailed in our community. Number one, that black lawyers were not competent enough. And I think the average person would say that, well, if they had to go to court, there's going to be a white judge or a white lawyer, that is the prosecutor, white jury, then I might as well have a white lawyer. So we had to overcome that. And as I have said many times, the way you overcome it is by performance. And my wife had been in real estate, and one of the bywords of most realtors, location, 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 as far as real estate is concerned. My byword in the practice of law was performance, performance, performance. If somebody came into the office and they asked you to do something, one thing was certain, I guaranteed if I said I'd have it on Monday, you can bet it would be finished the previous Saturday. So when they came in on a Monday, it would be ready. And an old gentleman in Youngstown, Ohio, told me one way to develop a practice, regardless of the obstacles, number one is, if you promise a client something, do the work. Secondly, charge a reasonable fee, and then live. And those three things, you've got to be successful. Fortunately for me, that was an ode that I practiced, set for myself, and the thing that guided me in my practice. If I said I'd do something for a person, they could take it to the bank. Number one, I'd give it to them at the time I promised it. I charged a reasonable fee, and I had no problems. So as a result, my practice grew without advertising, without anything like that. So it was performance. But it was difficult. It wasn't easy. But nonetheless, I'm thankful for having had the opportunity.
Something you said a minute ago I want you all to address again, because you said, Mr. Bell, that when you found a situation where homes could not be purchased anywhere people wanted to buy them, you didn't say this, but I got certain from what you said to us, is that it wasn't a woe is me kind of situation. You all sat down and got together and established the Beneficial Acceptance Corporation.
Correct.
A way to, in fact, provide for homes for persons.
Absolutely.
What has happened to us today? Why do we not just the black community, people in general, what has happened to us that we don't take a problem and try to figure out a solution, like apparently you all did in those days?
Well, we did because we saw the need and we felt that we had to. Five of us got together in my office and we established a corporation called Beneficial Acceptance Corporation, which was to be a mortgage loan company, a certified mortgage loan company to handle FHA and VA loans. We felt that that would be the vehicle whereby at least we could attack what existed in the real estate market in Columbus at that time, and that is to provide financing for those that wanted to buy a house in an area where if they had the money, they couldn't buy it. I know personally, because at the time I had sufficient funds to pay down on a particular property in a certain area, and I couldn't buy it. I just couldn't buy it.
It was not available for
me. It was not available for me. And that was not just true for me, it was true for a number of individuals who had the funds to pay and had good credit, could obtain a loan, but could not buy it because the real estate was not available for sale to us. But I am happy to say that as a result of activities like Beneficial Acceptance Corporation and a number of other things that brought about a change of attitude, so that now people can buy wherever their money will allow them to go. And that's not only just true here in Columbus, but across the country. And I think, and as a result, I think we've developed better neighborhoods than we had before, wherein people were so closed in and poor, dilapidated, rundown houses that they didn't feel as though they could contribute. But today, our folk are contributing in every area as possible, primarily because they established a good foundation upon which to build. And so we're developing youngsters that are going out and doing some great things. And I like to take the positive approach. So many folks say, well, our kids aren't doing anything. I like to say they're doing a lot of things. There are a lot of good kids out there that are doing some great things. But we aren't able to understand that because many times it's just not publicized. But only when it's publicized are the bad things. You look in the papers today and they only see the things that are bad. I would like to accentuate the positive as related to our young people. And there are a lot of good people. And a lot of it came about as a result of the changes in the housing patterns, changing in job market, changing in ability to obtain finance and jobs. And so if we're going to solve this problem that we see facing us, I think there's going to be a multiplicity of things that have to be brought to bear on all of our societies if we're all going to begin to enjoy and appreciate living in this great country.
Outstanding. We've got another caller right now, folks, online with us. Call, you still there?
Good to hear from you. My question is, how could the Columbus Today community, be the community that it was in the 50s and the 60s that the Bells talk about?
Ms. Bell, what do you think? And we'll come back to Mr. Bell. What do you think? How can, well, the question was this, how can the Columbus of the 1950s, and the positive parts about this, what he's asking, be the Columbus of today? What needs to happen in order to create this energy again around things you said early on, as a matter of fact? I want to ask a question anyway about you, to you anyway, Ms. Bell, about this. And this is something you said a minute ago. You said you felt you had to, in fact, give back, be a part of. Social organizations that start out here in the city of Columbus all were centered around having some outlets, I suspect, socially, but you're always about doing something positive for the community. And I think the caller is asking, how do we capture that again now in the city of Columbus? Those kind of positive things you all were doing in those days, how do we duplicate those things here today?
I think that there are those things that are happening today. They're just happening in a different way. Back then, our outlets were narrow as far as our social activities, number one. And so we had to form groups to be together to perform and do things in the city. And I don't know that they have to do that as much today as they did then. But I don't know, the children of today, I think, are more aware. I noticed I was just talking to my grandchildren, and the one said that she wanted to go to Harvard. And her mother said, well, if you go to Harvard, you're going to have to start doing more community activities than you're doing now. You'll have to start doing some charitable work, because they're not going to let you into Harvard if you don't have these attributes. So I think that the parents are doing a better job, and they're pushing the children more. I don't know of too many young people today that are not thinking about what can they do for someone else. I've met so many lately, and it just really makes me feel good. So I think the parents are helping the children in this respect and pushing them, and they're developing into grown-ups. I don't know, but that's the way I see it.
Absolutely. As well?
Yeah, let me piggyback on that also. And I think education is a major area for our folk. You got to remember that in World War II, a lot of us went to the service. Many young men came back and had available to them the GI Bill of Rights. As a result of exercising their rights under the GI Bill, they got an education in college that they might not have been able to afford otherwise. So we need to, so that established a cadre of folk that were somewhat educated. Many of them couldn't find a job in their field. They were working in the post office. But nonetheless, the exposure to a higher education allowed them to establish a family life that was undergirded by the type of things that we're talking about here, giving back, understanding your position in the community. I think it comes down to an understanding of our obligation to each other, an obligation of a parent to their children, and an obligation of both of them to the educational system and the total community, because that's where the surface, that's where it begins in education. Without it, we can't make it. Now, I don't know that the 50s and 60s there were a lot of things that we didn't have, and many of those things we didn't have we would like to have had at that time. But there were things that we did have, which I think my wife has alluded to, and that is up and down Mount Vernon. All the storefronts up and down Mount Vernon were not only open and operated by people of color, but were owned by people of color. So that is an area that we've got to begin to understand and to deliver. We've got to begin to develop a cadre of folk in business that own it, that not only real estate, residential real estate, but businesses, and so that we have an opportunity for our young people to come out and to become involved in the development and increasing these business opportunities. So there's a multiplicity of things that have to occur. But I don't know that I would like to go back to the 50s and 60s. Coming back to Columbus after having been away for 11 years, I can honestly say that there's been a lot of improvement, I fought well, I don't want to say the word, but I fought quite hard to get Russ Jones involved who was a candidate for city council. There'd been no person of color on city council up until that time. He didn't win, but somehow Mayor Sensenbrenner, who was mayor at the time, appointed him to city council. So he was the first African American to serve on city council after Poindexter way back in the 20s. But that was one step. Now look what you've got. You've got a number of folk on council, you've got a number of judges, you've got a mayor, you've got a lot of folk. So all of these things are improvements that have come about as a result of a groundswell of the things we're talking about in education. And so I don't want to go back to the 50s and 60s. I want to look ahead and say that we can even do better than what we're doing now. Columbus is a great town. It's come from just a capital of the state, population when I got here about 200,000-300,000 to where it's the largest city in the state. And so I feel that with the entree of more Fortune 500 companies into this area, this town has unlimited growth, unlimited possibilities. And not only is the capital of the state, but also the capital of a region, the entire region here, which encompasses 2/3 of the population of the United States. So I feel that we've got a long ways to go, but we've begun to develop tools whereby we might achieve that plateau. So I say keep going. I'm out of Columbus right now, but it's very dear to my heart because, as I said, it gave me a living and it's allowed me to support my family. And I've had a lot of good contacts here, a lot of good friends, for which I hold very, very close to me.
We're talking again to Mr. Napoleon Bell and Ms. Dorothy Bell. You'll be part of our discussion tonight. We're dialing 645-6557 with your question, your comment. We'd love to hear from you. As a matter of fact, I think we've got a caller on the line with us right now. Caller, are you still there?
Yes.
Please go through your question or comment. Good to hear from you.
Thank you. Yes, I have a question. I'm impressed with your emphasis on education and parenting. And I'm wondering how perhaps your personal experiences in traveling and seeing other cultures, your global experiences impact how you feel about how parents ought to educate their children and give them an experience of other cultures and diversity in our world today.
Oh, great question, caller. And I should tell our viewers out there, you all are well-traveled. That's one of your passions. Even with having moved away from Columbus, you still traveled, been to Asia, you've been to Europe many times, I know as well. First of all, where have you not been? You've been all across the United States, I am sure. Where else have you been on the way?
Australia, but I plan to take
Australia's on the list right there?
On the list.
Okay.
But the caller's question, I think, is a good one. And I think it comes down to the family. The family is the core of our society. The mother, the father, the children. And I know a lot of parents feel that they can't control their children, but that's their responsibility. The children are not asked to come here. The parents must somehow control their children. Now, just to give an example how things have changed to some extent in some areas. When I was a youngster, my mother and father, if I came home with a note from the teacher saying I did so-and-so and so, it wasn't a question whether my teacher was right or wrong. She was always right. The parents jumped on me and they said, look, son, you're wrong. And they found out what it was and they said, well, here's the way you change it. Now, sometimes I was punished for it, but at least I knew that I had to do what was told in school. But today I understand that too often parents not understanding exactly what's going on in school are not able to understand what the teachers are doing. And to some extent, the teachers themselves, and I have a teacher certificate, so I feel I can say this, and my daughter's a teacher. In some instances, I think the professionalism is no longer there. They're guardians, they're there to maintain order for a period of 8 hours, and that's it, and very little learning is going on, as evidenced by the graduation rate. But a good deal of it, of course, also, I place the blame on the parents themselves. In the 50s and 60s, in order, like someone said, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, that's the way it was. Not only your parents got on you, but the woman down the street who was a friend of your mother's or the person friend of your, they would get on you. So as a result, we had more eyes watching us than are watching the kids today. But I think the crux of the problem is parents have got to watch their children. They got to know where they are. They got to help them as best they can, and try to motivate them to achieve. In the absence of that, we'll just be a piece of wood blowing in the wind, and we keep blaming somebody else rather than looking inward and saying, well, look, maybe this is my fault. I know from personal experience, my two children, we always had fun. More often than not, we sat down and ate together, and I think that's important. Many times today, families don't get together to eat. One is eating one at different times because they're working at different times. But I think it's important that families understand that they are an integral group that is important to society. And if we're going to change this direction that we seem to be going, we've got to get back to the basics and understand that family is the core unit that has to be in control. And so I would say to this questioner that education is a big item, but it's got to be supported and undergirded by the family, because that's where it starts, right at the father and the mother and the children.
Ms. Bell, you've been sort of the co-pilot in this travel as well. What kinds of lessons, I guess, have you learned from a cultural standpoint that kind of play into how we might parent kids today? I mean, you've been, again, all over the world. Anything that you've gleaned from that travel that is applicable to how we might look at our kids today?
Well, I found that more people are more alike than different, number one. They have the same ability to deal with their children basically the same way, but depending on what part of the country you're in, it could vary. And sometimes, well, I'll say when we were in China, was that they had their children in school like 12 hours a day. And here in the United States, we're saying, no, we don't want 12-hour school days. And yet these kids are able to speak 5 languages because they are in school a longer length of time. And then I think, in addition to that, I think the basis is church. You know, I think that, and this is kind of off that subject, but
no,
I
please.
think that when we were growing up, it wasn't, are we going to church? We had to go to church. It wasn't a question whether we were going. And then we couldn't do anything else in the afternoon, not unless we did go to church. So it was a must. And we learned in church so many good things. And we did the helping thing, and that was another way that we learned to help and help people who needed more than we did. And there was always someone who needed more than you. And we would prepare meals and take them out to people who needed meals, and clothing that was needed. We gathered the clothing and distributed it. Kids learn a good lesson when they're doing things that are charitable. And if they're in church, they're going to learn a really good lesson. So I think the basis is church. I think we need to get the kids back to church.
So you got the church issue, you got education, you said, Mr. Bell, this whole issue of family and how important those are as well in terms of parenting and so forth. We've got a caller right now on the line with us right now. Caller, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Please go with your question or comment. Good to hear from you.
Thank you so much for taking my call. My question is related to the busing case, the desegregation case back in the 60s, and if Mr. Bell could elaborate somewhat on that case and explain whether or not the decision is still beneficial to the education system of Columbus.
And that again is the Brown case, is that right, sir? Caller, I think he made reference to a case in the 50s and so forth.
Hello?
Brown versus education?
I think it was a Brown case he makes reference to, and the relevance of that today. Is that still in force today?
It's a good question. Brown versus the Board of Education was a milestone which changed the Supreme Court's edict on the Plessy versus Ferguson, where we had separate but equal theory established in the educational system. And they knocked that down, saying if it's separate, it is not equal. And I'll say this, I had some personal responsibility in connection with that situation here in Columbus, because at the time, a good friend of mine, Nathaniel Jones, was the general counsel for the NAACP,
And then became judge,
federal judge,
down in Cincinnati area.
And then the young man here, Bill Davis, who filed the Pennick case, which is the case in Columbus dealing with segregation, he died, and a fellow in my office, Leo Ross, took his seat in that case, though the number one chair was by a man in I think Cincinnati or maybe it was down in Tennessee. But anyway, the NAACP decided to come in nationally, and that case was tried before Judge Duncan. And everybody knows the results there, and the separation of desegregation became a big issue. But I look back in 1954 on that decision, and I look at the situation today, and I see the ingredients are beginning to become more apparent, that things are becoming right back where they were. Now, not quite as bad, but let's say that without the effort of a parent being involved and directing their students and children in certain direction, we could drift right back to the situation where we've got more segregation now than there was at that time. But I hope not. But I think that as a result of the case, a lot has been achieved, but not nearly as much as we had hoped, because in a lot of areas they're knocking down the integration, mandatory integration. So you got all kinds of things now, different types of schools being where a parent can send his child anywhere. But at least we have the opportunity. If again, a parent is willing to take the time to do for his child or their children that they should do and find out what's available to them. And they can go to different schools where they can get a good education, and then follow them during their course of their education. But I think we are better off now than we were. But I've said many times that if we as a group, as a race of folk and as a society had the know-how to put a man on the moon, to set a goal and put a man on the moon, I would think that without question, we ought, if we're willing and believe that public education is the answer. I'm not altogether certain that is what is generally accepted. But if we say public education is the answer, I would think that we have the intelligence, we have the minds to be able to come up with a system that would make it work. But as you know, historically, public education has not always been the mean. It has not always been meant for everybody to become educated. Initially, it was only males, and then finally females, and certainly blacks were not even supposed to be able to read. So it was difficult, but we've overcome a lot. And I think we've got a long ways yet to go to make it a level playing field, but we've come a long ways. And I think as a result of Board of Education, Brown versus Board of Education, it was a milestone that gave us a leapfrog, and we're going to leapfrog again before long. So I'm satisfied that it was a big help.
51 years you all have been husband and wife, and that's a major accomplishment, as it were. What's the secret, folks?
Well, I don't know.
I think he knows how to say yes.
So,
Yes,
okay,
dear.
I'll make sure our viewers heard that now. Mrs. Bell says, Mr. Bell, the secret is you know how to say yes, dear. I'll make sure it's real clear.
Well,
So-
I think it's understanding what your respective roles are, and I always looked upon my role as a husband and as a father and as a friend where my family and wife is concerned. It's my responsibility to support my family, and I've held that uppermost in my mind. A lot of young men out there don't want to do that or haven't chosen to do that, but I believe in helping and supporting my family. Right from the very beginning, that was when my first child was born, my oldest daughter. I resigned from my job because I felt I wanted to practice law before she was born. I resigned in September 1958. She was born in January of 1959. I had no money, but nonetheless I said, this is enough to motivate me. And I feel that as a result of that, and other things too, has caused us to be able to not only tolerate each other, but to enjoy the 51 years that we've been married, for the most part. These are the better years, except for my condition now. But
We like pretty much the same thing too, so that has helped.
she used to like to dance. I used to like to dance.
So
He likes to travel. I like to travel. He likes to dance. He likes to go out. He likes to eat out. He's really sociable. So, and we've got along well with the children we're concerned. So we've always clicked.
Always click. You said that
Always
in the
listen.
comments. Say it again now. Make sure I heard that.
We'd always listen.
How important
to each
is that?
other.
How important is that?
Oh, it's so important. If you don't listen, you just don't get there. We listen. And he's been a good listener, as I have.
Yes.
As you have as well.
Yeah, it's been a two-way street. I think that's a big thing. It's a give and take, and what's good for us may not be good for somebody else, but nonetheless, you got to find your own situation. Once you find it, adhere to it, develop it, embrace it. Before you know it, 51 years will go by, and you won't even realize it. But we've enjoyed it. We've enjoyed living here in Columbus. We've enjoyed it. We spent 40 of those 51 years here in Columbus. And now we've been out in Las Vegas just outside of Las Vegas in Henderson for almost 11 years. But we haven't forgotten Columbus, because this is where our family is, it's our base, and it will always be home.
Always.
We're talking again to, I think, just two marvelous folk here. I've just got to know them this time we spent together. I so appreciate your being here. But to Napoleon Bell and Miss Dorothy Bell, you can be a part of our conversation tonight by dialing 645-6557 with your question, your comment. We'd love to hear from you. I think we've got a caller right now on the air with us right now. Please go with your question, your comment. Good to hear from you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, good to hear from you. Go with your
Yes,
question.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. My comment is that the Bells are an institution in this community. And my name is Buster Adams, and my mother, when she was living, they hosted an affair in Vegas, Miss Mary Lou Fields, and she was so appreciative of both of them. They were so gracious, and they are always remembered by the community here in Columbus. And it was so good for me to see both of them today. So Godspeed to both of you.
Thank you so much, sir. Institution, he says, this family, the Bell family here in Columbus, Ohio. How do you react to that?
Well, I think we've been given the opportunity in several ways. She in real estate and in social activity, and also in the church. I, of course, have been involved in the practice and civically and politically. And we've been fortunate, really, very fortunate to have been given the opportunities to partake in the things that we've been able to do. I only hope that some of the things have been worthwhile and lasting. But I can say this, I'm thankful for having had the opportunity to serve on the Chamber of Commerce of Columbus and as counsel to the Governor, Dick Celeste, because one thing it taught me, if you have access to power, that's important. And I think that particular job gave me access to power. And it's a good feeling to be able to say that, well, that you're able to go into the chief executive without having to be announced. And that to me I felt was an achievement on my part. Not only that, but involvement on the Chamber Board at Columbia Gas. I learned a lot there. And so I've had a lot of opportunities to learn and to enjoy and to reap the benefit to some extent of having participated in these organizations. But more often than not, I've learned a lot, and they've given back to me a great deal, for which I'm truly grateful. So I feel that I'm happy to have been part of the growth of this town, and it's one that I shall always be proud to have shared.
Life lessons, folks. We have just a few minutes left here. What life lessons? Both of you. Miss Dorothy, life lesson. What life lessons can you share with our viewing audience?
To enjoy life, to live your life as you would like to, as if tomorrow is the last day of your life. And to love, and to give of yourself. And when you do that, it makes you happy. Strange as it may seem, but it does. It makes you happy. Whether you're giving to your husband, giving to your children, giving to your community, giving to your church, giving to your friends, it's a whole giving situation. and it's I think it's top of my list.
Mr. Bell, life lesson.
Well, to live abundantly, I think, is, in a nutshell, is what I like to do. And I've tried to do that. I've tried to fashion my life as though it was the last day. And I've lived long enough now that I don't have too many days left. But I can say this, that one should always, as my wife has said, where you can help a brother or a sister out, be willing to do so. Because 9 times out of 10, that help that you gave to that person may be needed by you at another day. So you don't give with the idea of receiving something, but nonetheless, those that give receive far more than they have given. So friendship, make good friends, old ones and new ones. Try to take care of your children, protect your family, and do all that you possibly can to make a life better for those about you. And I think you'll find that in the long run, you benefit yourself. And that's what life is about, really. And it's been good to us, and hopefully our children have benefited, and we hope that we've been of some benefit to others. And then once you've done that, then it's time to say, well, thank you, Jesus.
Very fitting way to end this marvelous conversation this evening. I want to thank you both for who you are and what you've meant to this community. And the short while I have had this opportunity to be with you this evening has been an enormous joy and an enormous privilege. Themes come up about giving, sharing, loving, living, contributing, and all those things that we know are attributes that we all try to aspire to, but sometimes a little difficult to get that done for many of us. So you serve as 2 shining examples of what it's like to make sure it happens. So I want to thank you for being here again.
Thank you so much for inviting us, and we appreciate this, and we'll remember it, I guess, the rest of our lives. But we heard a lot about you, too. You're a giver, too.
Well, we appreciate that very much, sir. Folks we've been talking to again, Mr. Napoleon Bell and Miss Dorothy Bell, great members of our community. Hope you enjoyed our conversation tonight, and we hope to see you as part of our viewing audience in a broadcast in the near future. Folks, good evening.